So the photo of the green lady kind of changed the trajectory of Humans of New York, right? In the beginning, it was portraits of people, but then it became also about the story. Can you tell that story?
All right. This is, about 6 or 7 months. And it sounds like such a short amount of time, but this was like 6 or 7 months of just me living and breathing and sleeping and doing nothing but photograph. So, I mean, I would say it was probably like 3 or 4 years worth of work. I mean, literally, it was all I did. I would come home, I'd be so tired after a long day of work, and I would just lay down and I would sleep for, your rest. It's like 6 getting dark, and then I would go out to Times Square and try to get a few more portraits before the day was over. It's like it's all I did. And so it's like 6 or 7 months of doing this all the time. And it was starting to get a little bit of traction. And I, at the time, was just taking photos of people. And then occasionally I would be writing my own captions, like a little observation. I try to be funny. I was 26. A lot of the stuff makes me cringe now. Just like little observations. Some of it was good. Some of it's still funny. Some of it still makes me laugh. But some of it was very 26.
It's still on your blog, right? Like I can go back and see it.
Yeah, well, it's also in the first book because this was largely what the first book was. It's like, and I think you feel a natural resistance going back and looking at your early work anyways, because you're just like, obviously, if you still thought it was good, you'd still be doing it, And like you have moved so much past it now. It's like, but that's still like the best-selling book I've ever had here, the first one. And it's been so resistant to go back and look at it. And I went recently, and a lot of it does kind of make me cringe. But yeah, some of it's like, okay, that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny because I was like writing my own captions, which I would never do now.
Right.
That is so far away from my ethos now. I would photograph somebody and add commentary. So a lot of times it would be trying to be funny, harmless. It wasn't ever anything mean, but that's so far from my ethos now, which I completely try to disappear. I write these very long form stories. And so I'd been doing that for months, just photographing people, occasionally adding my own caption. And there was getting a little bit of traction. And one day I photographed this lady dressed all in green. And then the next day I got sick and I couldn't go out and photograph. And remember, I was very disciplined at the time. I always had to post something on the blog. And I didn't have anything to post. And so I had this picture of the green lady, and it was a bad picture. I probably wouldn't have posted it otherwise because I really messed it up. But I put it up, and then I remember she had said something to me. She had said, I used to be a different color every single day, but one day I was green, and that was a great day. So I've been green for 15 years. And I was just like, okay, well, I'll just put that little quote above the picture. And I did. And it was by far the most liked, this is Facebook, most liked picture that I'd ever put up, which was like 100 likes. You know what I mean? Like, because my audience was tiny. And it was a eureka moment. It's like, wow, people are much more interested in learning about these people than they are in seeing these people, which makes sense, right? And so from that moment on, I think it's been 10 years now, and just yesterday they announced, the last book was a #1 New York Times bestseller. So it's been 10 years of maintaining a very large audience on the internet, which is very difficult to do.
It's also very powerful, which we'll talk about later. But
it's just difficult to hold attention at all on the internet, and especially for a sustained amount of time. And looking back, on it, I think one thing that I've always done is, no matter how much I've committed to a path, like when I feel the wind blowing a different direction, I would be willing to drop everything and follow that wind.
Is it just like a gut feeling, or is it response from the audience?
I'll give you like a great example. Like, I'd already signed a contract for my 4th book. It was going to be a book, and I'm still probably going to do this book eventually, of the remote interviews that I've been doing, because those are something that's very different, and they involve a bunch of extra photography. They're just very materially different than the stories that I've been telling beforehand. And that's always my requirement.
And this is during quarantine. You've been doing remote.
Yeah, but then it worked so well, I kept doing it. There you go. There's another example. It's like it was meant to just be during quarantine, but the stories were so engaging. I wasn't doing them random anymore. I had 20,000 submissions, and people were sending in extra photography, so they were visually much more engaging than the interviews I was doing on the street, because you would have these photos taking you through the person's life as you were reading the stories. And so I was going to make a book on that, and I'm working on that. And then Tanqueray happens, and this is something I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Telling a 12,000 word story on Instagram and Facebook. I am not the official historian of social media, but I pay attention to it a lot. I've never seen anybody else do anything like it. Over 32 posts. And I was very unsure if it was going to work. And I worked for months on it. And seeing how well it did work, I was just like, clearly the audience is engaging with this material in a very deep way. And I just called my agent, just like, I think we need to stop this next book, and I've got to figure out how to do a book on Tanqueray, or Stephanie. And, I don't know what that's going to be, but that's the way the wind is blowing right now. You know what I mean? And so it's just like the ability of, no matter how great one path seems, when another path opens up, and there's wind to immediately drop everything and go down that path. I've done it multiple times over the past 10 years, and I think that's why the blog has existed as long as it has. I mean, there's been no criticism that's ever been, I'm very proud of. There's been no criticism. There's been some valid criticism written about Humans of New York. There's been no criticism that's written about Humans of New York that's still applied 2 years later. It's just like after the work has always changed so quickly. It's always been evolving so quickly and morphing and changing so quickly that you can never pin it down.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes I get the habit of, I guess, a creator to read bad things written about you on the internet, and I think it's made me better. It hurts when you read it, but people make valid points, and they see weaknesses and inconsistencies in your work that you can remedy, and they exist. And so, I've consumed that when people analyze and critique my work. And, it's one thing that makes me proud is that when I go back 1 or 2 years and I read, old criticism, it's like by the time I'm reading it, the work has already evolved and changed so much that it's no longer applicable.
Yeah.